Good Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks for joining us. The Browns enjoying the week off. They are on the bye week, won't be active until a week from Sunday when they will host the San Francisco 49ers. Continue to kind of unsort things with Deshaun Watson and his shoulder. This is Andrew Siciliano on the Rich Eisen show talking about what it means to be medically cleared to play.
Here's what medically cleared to play means in NFL terms. It means you're not going to make the injury worse if you go out there. And liability-wise, we feel comfortable as an organization that cares about A, our investment, but B, your health as well. Equal. We care about them equal. We feel comfortable telling you that you can play football today. All right? That's what cleared to play means. Liability. Like, hey, doctor, do I still need to use the crutches? Well, it depends how you feel. Like, you can't hurt it anymore, but really it depends how you feel. That's what cleared to play means. That doesn't mean the guy could throw, and that doesn't mean he doesn't have shooting pain in his shoulder. I don't know if either are true. But cleared to play means we feel comfortable enough morally and business-wise to tell you that it's okay for you to play football today. Doesn't mean that he could play it well. Doesn't mean it doesn't come at great pain. And it doesn't mean that he could be effective. But it means morally and investment-wise, we feel comfortable checking the boxes and saying you're okay. That's what it means. The guy said he couldn't throw. Okay? So this narrative, he refused to play, let's get rid of that, please, because that's unfair for any player. I also don't like the pain tolerance issue. I've had coaches tell me off air, I never like to use the phrase pain tolerance.
With that, let's welcome in Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. And let's talk a little bit about the whole Deshaun Watson not playing against the Ravens one last time, Brad. Part of the problem is we have no idea what the injury to the shoulder is. That is where the problem lies. They never said what it was.
Yeah, they gave us shoulder contusion, right, which is pretty broad. And then Evan Washburn elaborated a little bit, right, in the broadcast that he had some fluid in his rotator cuff, right? So I think that, what Andrew Siciliano is saying there is actually pretty important. Medically cleared to play tells us that there's no structural damage, I think, right? And then we've heard some reports that that's the fact too. So we know there's no structural damage because if there was, then he wouldn't have been medically cleared to play because if he takes a big hit, he's going to hurt it worse. So if they feel like he can go out there and play and not injure it further, then I think it's safe to say that, the dreaded AC joint and all of the stuff that like Derek Carr was going through and some of that stuff, it seems to be okay. And it's really probably a bruise that has a lot of inflammation and has some fluid in his rotator cuff, which made it hard for him to, drive the ball down the field or throw the ball more than 10 yards. So, I think that's the extent of it right now. How fast does that heal? That's going to be the ultimate question here, right? The handling of this whole thing, I have more of an issue with, Dave, of the way that it was handled after he elected to go out. I have no issue with him not playing, right? I actually think it's probably the smart decision in the long term, especially with the bye week on the back end. But, the not having – for a quarterback who threw the ball, 5 times throughout the week, right, game week, and then twice before the game, you don't have a contingency plan in place. You don't have a second game plan for DTR in place. You just run him out there and have him run the same game plan you were going to run with Deshaun Watson, which was very pass heavy. And secondly, Dave, why was it so pass heavy for a quarterback with a bad shoulder? So both of those are puzzling to me. And it almost feels, once again, big Stefanski supporter, but has me scratching my head here on why these guys that are so prepared and so attention to detail at all times don't have a plan B in place for a guy that threw like 4 passes all week long.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I have been labeled a Kevin Stefanski apologist by a number of our viewers. So I don't get it. So we also know that Deshaun Watson is in Houston now. I don't have any issue with that, but that seems to be a big topic of discussion. Your thoughts on those?
Well, actually, we had a Dr. Jesse Morse on our show last night, who is a physician, and he treats a lot of pro athletes and stuff. He's based out of Miami, and I asked him that question, and he actually said it's probably a good thing in that when players have their own PT guys, right, and outside of the facility, and a lot of times what the team will allow procedurally, or what the team will, when you're in the building, you're under those PT guys, and those physicians work for the team, right? And there's only certain things that they can do that a lot of times players will go to their private PT guy because they will maybe use more advanced, or they know what the player likes or what they need to heal faster because they understand their body and they've been working with them for years and years. So the fact that he was in Houston, he assumed, the doctor, now he's just assuming this, but he said, I would assume he went there to see his private physician, right, or his own PT guy who will then treat him, and is probably better off doing that than seeing, the guys in the building that A, work for the team, and B, he can get the best treatment possible that way. So, like he was commenting, and it was fascinating that, he has guys fly in for a day to see him to get the treatment that they want, because the NFL locker room they're in won't provide that same treatment.
And again, not knowing what exactly, I don't like the sound of rotator cuff and fluid on my quarterback. Those are two things I would rather not hear when you're talking about my quarterback. But yeah, they need to figure something out to get him on track. We'll get to Andrew Berry and kind of the way they dealt with this, with his meeting. But take a look at this. I found this kind of interesting, this tweet. 3 of the 4 Browns offensive game plans were wrecked shortly after kickoff or before kickoff. Week 1, no rain in the forecast. Somehow it rained all game. Neither team planned for it, and it was difficult to adjust. Week 2, Chubb got injured early, and clearly the Browns' game plan kind of got skewed. And the Titans game, everything kind of went well, and they played well. And then week 4, Watson ruled out hours before kickoff game plan. Well, it didn't look like it was tailored for the guy that was playing quarterback. So I guess when I look at those first 4 games, have you seen much difference in the offense that you're seeing the Browns run under Deshaun Watson this year and what you've seen the past couple of years? Because maybe I'm missing it, but it doesn't look like what I expected it to.
No, you're absolutely right. I don't think anybody expected it to look like this. Now, listen, so week 1, and this is a good tweet. It's interesting, right? So week 1, the rain, and I thought Kevin did a good job of pivoting into, the older version of that offense, or what we're more used to, because that gave you a huge advantage over Cincinnati in that game. So, okay, I can deal with that, right? Chubb getting injured, you would think that would force them to lean more into what supposedly they were, this new offense, right, that they were putting in the offseason. We didn't see that much. They looked really bad that game. The offense was ineffective, really. Couldn't move the ball well enough to get a win. And then in this game, so the shocking thing is, right, you start DTR. Dave, they ran 64 out of 71 plays in 11 personnel, the most ever. That's a 3 wide receiver set. the most ever in the Stefanski era. So the time you choose to open it up the most is when you're starting your 5th-round rookie quarterback. Boggles my mind. There are other things that are missing, right? So 41% motion for the Browns, right, through 4 weeks. That's 22nd in the NFL. The best offenses in the league, Dave, are using motion in exotic ways and almost every single play because it provides your quarterback indicators of what the defense is doing. It gets people moving. It messes with the defense's eyes. You would just expect more of that in this offense. What we expected to see, right, was and what I expect to see after the bye, especially after some of the things Andrew Berry said, is a lot of shotgun run inside zone, which turns then into RPO stuff, a lot of motion, and a lot of moving the pocket for Watson, but getting, if you can set up that shotgun run, be successful with it to some point on the inside zone stuff, then work in the RPOs. There are so many wrinkles off that it provides you numerous answers to what the defense puts in front of you. That's what I expected to see. Very Houston-esque offense, and we just haven't seen it enough yet.
Brad Ward and I from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, going to take a quick time out. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk more about what we expect to see this offense as it evolves after the bye. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. A couple of things to touch base on. With all this talk about trading for wide receivers, we can't even get the wide receivers we have involved in the offense. Why would we go out and get another one? That ain't going to change the picture any. And number two, maybe we could get the Broncos go even up. Jedrick Wills for their left tackle. I'm not sure of his name, but maybe throw him a 5th or 6th round pick with it. But that dude's got to go, Jedrick Wills. All right, Dave, I love you, brother. Be good, be safe. It's a jungle out there, and we both know it. Great show as always.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Frank's talking about Garrett Bowles, higher dollar figure, a little bit older than Wills. Yeah, Brad, Jedrick Wills has got to be. I know publicly they've defended him. I would imagine they got to be wondering what is going on.
The Andrew Berry said very definitively once again in his comments about Wills, and he brought it up, right, himself even in his little monologue. But he, Jed Wills knows he can be better, and he will be better. Listen, we've heard that before. I don't know. There's no indication, Dave, that he is turning any corner anytime soon, and they have him on the books for next year too, which really puts them in a tough spot, right? Like, I don't know what they can do, but as desperate as they have been to maximize this roster this year and this all-in approach, right? I would be desperate to do anything to provide another option at left tackle. Like, I don't know if they will. You've got the trade deadline at, Halloween? I would be uber aggressive in trying to figure some way to get him out and another guy in, or at least provide another option, because they are giving up pressure way too much, and it's making this transition to whatever offense you want to run, old Stefanski, new Stefanski, RPO, 13, whatever you want to run. It's going to be difficult if you're allowing the pressure that they're allowing, and the run blocking.
So the other thing that has to be addressed is Elijah Moore. He leads the NFL in separation and is below average in receiving yards. I've seen enough of him going east to west. You're doing the defense a favor. You're taking away from his biggest asset, his speed, if you don't get him downfield and put pressure on the secondary or people to tackle him in space.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, I just want to see him used like a traditional receiver. Like, I've seen the film breakdowns of him. The guy can stop on a dime. He reads defenders' hips well. He could, like you said, the separation is right there, plain as day, through 4 weeks, and he's not even out running that many routes, right? I mean, they got him in the backfield half the time. That he has to be used out of the slot or in a more traditional wide receiver role. I think he will. I actually heard Nathan Zagura say that he believed, and usually he kind of has his ear on things or his finger on the pulse of things, but that he believed he would be used in a more traditional role coming out of the bye. Boy, I hope so, because this is not the answer. The gadget stuff, the motion stuff, all of that trickeration and getting him the ball out. Like, he's not Deebo Samuel, right? Like, let's use him as a wide receiver, because that is where I think he would be most effective for this team. Because right now, when Watson's out there, it's Watson and Cooper, and that's about it, right? DPJ sprinkled in. So they could really use another pass catcher out there, and the separation is just just screaming off the page, right, at this offense. Like, use him differently, please.
You're turning away free yards. This is basically what's happening. They're playing 5 yards off him, and you're saying, we're good. We're gonna trick you and try to get 25. Just take the 5. So what did you see against the Ravens defensively, and is there anything that gives you some concern long term that you saw the Ravens do?
So, yeah, actually, in the second quarter, if you recall, they went on about 2 drives where the run game was pretty dominant against our defense, first time all year. They kind of went right down the field. And what they were doing is just simple jet sweep motion, but timed up so that the motion man is crossing the quarterback at the point of handoff. So it creates that confusion of, is the ball going to the jet sweep guy to the perimeter, or is it going to the running back? And it really neutralized the aggressiveness or downhill attacking mentality of the Browns linebackers, and which creates wider run lanes and everything, right? So even that 1 second hesitation, because they're waiting to see who has the ball, or which way do I break, was the difference. Because after that, the Ravens are good, a good fundamentally sound team, and they had it blocked up, they had it schemed up. You can watch a lot of the film where they had a hat on everybody, right, and guys were going untouched for 5-10 yards before any kind of resistance at all. So listen, the problem here is the NFL is a copycat league, right? You're going to see teams do this now, as though it's like the kryptonite to the Browns defense. So they will, I'm sure during this bye week, Jim Schwartz and company are working on their answer for this. Probably, I don't think it's a real complex answer. I think it's, some stuff with more eye discipline, right? And maybe a little bit of a formational change if teams are going to keep doing this. But I think it can be solved that easily. But they were just unprepared for maybe not unprepared for it. It gave them problems, though. You know what I mean? And it neutralized the aggressiveness that they had been playing with. And so they got San Francisco, right? They've watched the film. They're certainly going to use it. The Seahawks, the Rams, all these teams, I would think, are looking to deploy similar, type of jet motion with the run game to confuse these linebackers and make their eyes be true. And that caused problems on Sunday big time.
Well, they do have a week to figure it out. Back in action a week from Sunday against the 49ers at Cleveland Brown Stadium. And Brad Ward, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
You're the best, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Brad Ward, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff. The Orange and Brown Report, also the host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. We're going to dive a little deeper into what the Ravens did against that Browns defense. Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com with some video analysis and film breakdown of what Brad and I were just talking about. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports for CLE continues. We continue talking Browns. Time to take a film analysis video breakdown of how the Ravens attacked the Browns defense. Whenever we talk video, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Lance, it's really the first time, I won't say the Ravens offense kind of beat up the Browns defense, but there were some things for the first time all season to be concerned with where the Browns defense is concerned.
Well, if you look at it, you're right. So it wasn't as much of a concern, in my opinion, as everybody's made it out to be. They started a drive from the 10-yard line and a drive from the 38-yard line, which makes it really tough on a defense. The thing you learned in this game is that football is always complementary, and the offensive struggles they had really affected their defense. But that being said, I'm a huge Todd Monken fan. I loved him. He was obviously part of the national championships for Georgia last 2 years. He's been in the NFL, NCAA. He's college ball. He's been around, so he knows what he's doing. And he took with the Browns' strengths, and he said, they got a great D-line, so we have to figure it out. And they did some things that I think were very, very smart. And obviously, the Browns will adjust. Remember, the more games you have, the more film you have. And Todd Monken's very good at what he does. And, the Browns were feeling very good about what they had done. And Todd Monken was new in terms of what he's going to do. And now the Browns will adjust to them next time. But he had a very good plan. He took what the Browns did at a very high level and used it against them.
So let's take a look at the run game. Was concerning, obviously. What do we see here in this first clip?
So this is the first thing he did when you watch the film. So they had a 93-yard drive and a 73-yard drive that were really well done. And what they did was they allowed the Browns D-line loves to penetrate and get upfield. And you and I have talked about for weeks how they get 3 to 4 yards deep in the backfield. Well, Todd Monken actually allowed this to happen. So this is a play where they're actually going to pull the right guard and the left guard. They're going to pull them to the left, and that's going to affect the linebackers in the second level. However, the guy on the top, Patrick Ricard, who's another lineman who plays tight end fullback for them, he's going to come in down the side, and he's going to wham block Dalvin Tomlinson, who they actually left unblocked. And they left multiple guys unblocked and then kicked them out, trapped them, or whammed them from the other side. So this is an adjustment that Monken said, hey, these guys get upfield. Let's let them get upfield and let's trap block them. Let's not let them know what's coming. And this is what they did. And they had real good success with these traps, these long traps, these wham blocks of actually allowing this defender, Tomlinson thinks he's unblocked. And that's not how it works in pro football. So very good adjustment here, basically saying, I know you get upfield, we're going to kick you. And that was their first adjustment.
And again, so Tomlinson, one of the defensive tackles And we've talked about how speed on the edges has been a factor too. This next clip, Okoronkwo, a guy that's a speed guy. What do you see with this?
So here's what you got here. This is a really good long trap they do, kind of a counter down. It's blocking down, kicking out. But one of the things they did in all their run game is they use Zay Flowers as eye candy or eye conflict, I like to say, for the defense. And as he goes in motion, you're going to see Walker widen outside with him. Now that's going to put Taki as the only one in there, and they actually have a 5-man box now with Taki leaving the box. Then they're going with that motion. They leave Okoronkwo up top. They leave him unblocked and pull Simpson, the backside guard, to kick him out. So what ends up happening here is the same kind of thing with Thompson. He gets too far upfield and makes it an easy kick for the left guard. This is what they did. Again, they left people unblocked, and then they kicked him out. This is a great example of a long trap here, using Zay Flowers to get the second level's eyes, and then kicking and not blocking Okoronkwo and kicking him out. Really good scheme by Monken here.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the Browns defense kept getting a little bit more aggressive, trying to make plays because they knew they had to. And those are the kind of things, if you get a little bit more aggressive, it works even more in the favor of what Monken was trying to do offensively in the run game.
Yeah, and when you one part of your three sets, your offense, defense, if one part is struggling, the other part tries to help out. And sometimes that makes you press. Sometimes that makes you read and maybe not read your keys because you're trying to make a play. And I think one of the adjustments the Browns got to make is they got to get back to reading their keys a little bit more. These guys are just kind of pinning their ears back and coming. And I think they'll get back to watching film and seeing what schemes are coming. But that's what ended up happening is I think they tried to press a little bit because the offense. So, are they trying to create a turnover and are they trying to get a fumble and an interception? When you try to do that, sometimes you get away from your fundamentals and you get missed tackles and big plays. So I think that's what ended up happening is that they just tried to make a play for the team.
And you mentioned Flowers. So this third clip, Flowers involved again. So take us through what you see here.
So here's an adjustment. So the defensive line, now they're constantly they're getting trapped. So, they're going over on the sideline after a big drive, and the defensive coordinator, Schwartz, and the D-line coach are saying, hey, they're letting you get upfield because they're going to kick you out. One of the adjustments is then you play the line of scrimmage. Well, what happened with the Ravens is they made their adjustment too, and they started to go to the zone now. So now they're getting these big doubles because the defensive linemen are not getting upfield. Again, you're going to see Obo get upfield. He runs underneath. You're going to see Delpit go with Flowers. Again, they use Flowers in motion. And what they do here is they just get a big double team, a deuce block on a 3 technique with the right guard and right tackle, and they get a big ace block double team with the left guard in the center. And they get tremendous movement here because now the Browns D-line is doing something they're not really used to, playing the line of scrimmage because they've been getting trapped. So, again, a really good adjustment by Monken and great movement by those guys inside.
And, again, we've talked about how the Browns' defensive front was playing in the offensive backfield, and you see here they're getting moved a little bit off the line of scrimmage, which, again, you mentioned it's because of the trap. So you can kind of see for the first time all year that Ravens offensive line was able to kind of dictate things against the Browns D-line.
Yeah, and I think what you'll see is some adjustments now by Schwartz because now teams have got him on film. So they're going to have to do a little better job of the second level not be affected by eye candy or that eye conflict with motion. You're going to see that first level play a little bit more hands-on, get their hands on guys in front of them. They're still going to penetrate. And what ends up happening is that the reason I'm a big, huge Jim Schwartz fan is they have an identity. And when you have an identity, sometimes that identity gets beat. And it's okay for me if you get beat on what you do. And when you're a big play, tackle for a loss, sack, interception team, which the Browns are trying to be, occasionally you're going to get beat. Occasionally teams are going to make a good adjustment. Now it's the Browns' job to go back and say, all right, so if you look at that last play, Okoronkwo gets way upfield. Well, maybe this week he stays on the line of scrimmage just a little bit if he sees zone. So, again, they're going to watch the schemes. They're going to watch the film. They're going to make adjustments. But they're going to stay true to who they are, which is getting upfield and pressuring. And they'll stay true to that. They just got to make some adjustments on the first and second level.
All right, so the fourth and final clip on how the Ravens kind of attacked this Browns defense, a passing play here. What did you see with the Ravens pass game?
Well, first of all, this is a really good throw by Jackson. So Browns actually do a pretty good job here JOK doesn't see the ball coming, but what they did at the start of this play is they're going to move Gordon from the outside. They're going to motion him back in. And when Gordon goes back in, JOK goes with him. That immediately tells Jackson and Aguiar, the receiver, that this is man coverage. And you're going to see at the bottom of the screen, Aguiar is going to run a spot or a pick route. I call it a spot route because I'm an offensive guy, so I think it's a legal play here. But if you see what he does is he stands right there and he makes JOK go underneath. And by going underneath, he's beat. And this is a classic, really good adjustment by Monken. Monken said, you know what? Ward and Emerson are doing a really good job of covering. Let's make other people cover. Let's make Newsom, who's coming off injury. Let's make those linebackers cover. And the Browns linebackers and Newsom, they do a good job, and they will do a good job. But Monken said, I know those outside guys can cover. Let's make these other guys cover. And, he had 15 completions, and 9 of them went to tight ends or backs, and 60 of them went to Andrews. So they made other people cover. And this is just a man coverage spot wheel. And when you see those backs go in the backfield at the start of the snap, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to determine, is it man or is it zone? And then that receiver knew and Jackson knew. He knew exactly where he was going with the football. Again, a really good adjustment by Monken. Let's attack those linebackers and the nickel backs and the safeties and stay away from those really, really good cover corners.
So when you look at what you saw from the Browns defense here, are the adjustments relatively easy for them to make relative to how the Ravens were attacking them?
Well, I think what you're going to see, especially when you get some teams that run the ball and have some good schemes, is that they're going to stay in man coverage, but I think you'll get less press man. And what that means is that they're going to back off 6 or 7 yards just so they can have an eye on the receiver and an eye in the backfield. And what that'll do is that'll allow them to play run support a little bit. It'll allow them not to get picked and rubbed inside on those like a route like that. It'll also allow them to cover crossing routes because they're not going to get picked off. So there's some things I still think they're going to press. I still think they're going to make the adjustment. And I do not think Schwartz is going to give in because they had one bad day. And I don't know if they had a bad day. They had 2 really good drives and then, 2 drives that were set up by, interceptions by the offense. So they were able to move the ball. They had 2 good drives, but they had a lot of 3 and outs too. So they did some good things. They just got to adjust a little bit to what teams are doing. But yeah, I see those corners backing off and just playing man coverage still, but maybe playing off a little bit more.
Lance Reisland and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the offense, some tweaks that the Browns offense may make during the bye week as they move forward, getting ready to face the 49ers a week from Sunday. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So Browns on a bye week, ready to tweak some things offensively. Take a look at this note. Jake Burns tweets this out. So Browns have the NFL's 6th best yards per play in RPO concepts 2023, so that's this year. 3rd best yards per play when giving the ball off and running it in that RPO. And they're currently 24th in the NFL in RPO usage. Lance, when you look at those, there isn't a Nick Chubb that kind of skews what the running back can do. Do you think they go to more of an RPO where, Deshaun Watson is in a shotgun and they play to his strengths?
I think that's been a question they've had. And, obviously with him being out late, that really affected the game plan. But the thing that I think they struggle with right now, more than anything, is just their identity. So, yes, I think the RPOs are really successful because of what they've done in the run game. They've shown some success out of empty. They've shown some success in 11 and 12 and 13 personnel. But what I think they're doing right now, it's more of a grab bag. And I've been there before where you're not really sure what your identity is. If you look at the Browns back in their Baker days and 3 or 4 years ago when they weren't as successful, when they were successful on the offense, one of the reasons they were successful is they had an identity. And I don't think they really know their identity right now. Are they a pass team? Are they a gun team? Are they a pistol team? Are they whatever? Are they underneath? Are they more of what personnel groups now? Now you have injuries. Now you don't have Chubb. They had a certain idea of what they want to do. If you look at Elijah Moore, he hasn't been quite as successful in the route in the scheme they want or how they want to use him. So how do you tweak that a little bit? You just let him run routes, more RPOs, get in the slot a little bit more. So yeah, I think the RPOs are an option, but more than anything else, they have to create an identity. And I still think that offensive line is the strength of their team. Obviously, Deshaun Watson is going to get them to the next level. But right now, those guys are kind of reaching, and they're struggling in pass protection because there's only so many reps in a week. And when you have only so many reps in the week, now you got to work pass protection. Pass protection is less aggressive than run. And I know, a lot of people argue and say it's not passive. It is passive by nature. It's not soft, and it still can be physical. But the Browns have been a physical run team. And I still think as much as they throw, they have to recreate that identity of being a physical run team and being productive when they do run the ball.
Do they change the way they run the ball? Because, again, Jerome Ford, and I think Jerome Ford will be an average to above average NFL running back. I think Pierre Strong could be an average to an above average NFL running back. Kareem Hunt at this stage of his career is an average to a, none of them are elite. You don't have what you had in Nick Chubb. How do you get to where you can be effective when you don't have elite?
Well, I think what you got to do is that first of all, game planning. So you go into a game plan and you got to figure out, who are the weaknesses on the defense and who can we attack, both at the first level of the defensive line and the second level. Then you have to run what you know. And, everybody wants Coach Stefanski to change things. And I will tell you, one of the things that I always believe in is that you have to run what you know. And the reason you have to run what you know is because you have to know how to fix it. And maybe it doesn't work, but at least you have a plan how to fix it. And so many times coaches will try things because other teams are doing them. And what ends up happening is that if it doesn't work, you don't know how to fix it. And, I think what they're doing right now is that they have to stay with their outside zone. They have to stay with their counter game. They have to stay with what they know how to fix. But I think the big thing they have to do is they have to scheme it, and they have to run it at the right people. They have to run it in the right down and distance, and they have to continue to make, get better in practice. And going back to what I said in the first question, I think they got to establish that identity that when we do run the ball, we're going to be physical and we're going to vertically displace people off the line of scrimmage. They've lost that part of their run game, and that they can get that back. Regardless of who's running the ball, regardless of what the scheme is, they got to get physical up front again.
Does that mean you don't expect them to go to more three wides? You expect them to go kind of to the two tight ends, or how does that look? What do you think it looks like?
Well, I still think 10 and 11 personnel is the way to go with Deshaun Watson. But I think what you do then is that you lighten the box when you have those receivers out there. The Browns have some pretty good skill guys, so I still think you lighten the box. I still think they're going to go more 11, 10, maybe a little 12 personnel, get Akins involved. He was a big pickup that hasn't been involved very much yet. But I still think I don't think you use as much 13 personnel or 21 personnel. I still think you stay in these spread sets. But regardless of the spread set, you can run power out of one back and two back. You can run the counter game out of one back or two back. You can run their pin and pull scheme out of one back and two back. You can run it out of multiple different sets. And I still think you need to lighten the box because you need to run against 5- and 6-man boxes because they're not getting as much movement as they have in the past. And it is not Nick Chubb running the ball. So I think the formation, that goes back to, kind of what I said in the first question. I think they have to scheme it up. They have to get people out of the box. They have to run at the right people. They have to down and distance stuff to make sure that they're getting the looks they want. If you want to get nickel in the game, make sure that you have the right personnel against the 49ers that get you in the nickel so you can run against one less linebacker, things like that. So I think it's a combination of attitude, scheme, staying with what you know. I don't think you can change run game. I think you got to stay with pin and pull, counter, zone. But how do you do that out of one back, and how do you use the spread sets, and how do you get the looks that you want? That's what they're working on in this bye week.
The other thing is they've gotten the ball in Elijah Moore's hands, but it's been more north-south than east, or east-west than north-south. Do you think they try to get him a quicker game where he's got a lot of separation. We've seen that. Do you try to get the ball in his hands going north-south quicker?
It's a tough question. They tried some jet sweeps. They tried some things with him. I think the RPO game, like you said, could be really good in the slot, just reading that backer. Really simple, running their pin and pull, running their counter game. If the backside backer blitzes, just throw the quick slant on their RPO. So simple RPOs, ball in space, maybe some more quick game. If they're getting a loaded box with the run game, maybe some more quick game RPO where you tag like a quick hitch out there where he's got a screen attached with the run game. I still think they're trying to do I still think Stefanski's doing a really good job of trying to figure out how to get them the ball in space. And they're new, and I think that's the struggle right now is how do you get him the ball in space? Because east-west is part of what his strength is, right? So he runs really well. You want to use him east-west, but you got to use him vertically as well. And do you just line him up at receiver more? Again, along with the scheme, along with the attitude, how do you take Elijah Moore? What are you doing well, and how can you get him the ball in space? Because really, it's not a play for me with him. It's the ball in space with him. And I think that's what this is what that bye week is for. They got to fix and address the things that they did not do well. And as good as they were against the Titans, they weren't that good. And as bad as they were against the Ravens, they weren't that bad. So they got to figure out, how do we get everybody involved and how do we make this offense work? Which all comes down to Deshaun Watson. It's got to be healthy. He's got to be the trigger man. He's got to be the guy that leads the show.
Yeah, I agree with you. Elijah Moore in space puts pressure on defenders to tackle. And you haven't seen enough of that yet. And I think you're right. I think they're kind of searching for what unlocks that.
Well, there's nothing worse than grab bagging. And right now, that's what Stefanski in the offense, they're trying to find what is going to work so they can get in a rhythm. If you think about Stefanski, he wants to run outside zone and the boot off it. They want to run counter and the boot off it. They want to get an empty and find a matchup they like. He has a set, and we all do as coaches. We have things that we like, and we try to adjust always to our personnel, but you only know what you know. So right now they're struggling trying to find out what do they do well, what are their strengths, what are the other team's strengths, and how do you marry that? And that's where they're at. And they've had that issue with Watson now for a while because being an empty and in 10 personnel and throwing the ball 45, 50 times a game does not match up with their personnel up front. That's not how their offensive line is built. So how do you allow them to pass protect, but how do you get the run game involved? Those are all questions that everybody's going to want to see moving forward, including myself. I think they stay with what they know, but they try to scheme it in formation to get what they want from the defense.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff. Cleveland.com, as well as The Plain Dealer with the X's and O's. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Sports4CLE continues talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Andrew Siciliano of the NFL Network talking about how the Browns handled the quarterback situation with the Ravens game. This is from the Rich Eisen Show.
The issue with the Browns is, well, did you get the other guy ready enough? And did you lull yourself into a false sense of confidence that Deshaun was going to play because he said he was going to play, and then you took the field kind of unprepared? And that has to be unpacked. I don't know the right answer, to be honest with you, but that's what the sports talk radio and the angry fans are going nuts with in Cleveland right now. Well, okay, then why didn't the other guy play better, and why weren't you more prepared for the other guy, right? But if Deshaun woke up and said, man, I thought I was going to feel better, like he told Mary Kay Cabot of the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, whatever they call it right now, Friday off to the side, yeah, I'm fine, I'm going to play. But then it gets to more layers. Like Barry asked yesterday, do you think that was just false bravado? Like because he had never been unable to play. Like, the guy took a bus 10 hours with a collapsed lung.
Right.
Remember that?
Yep.
Don't question his toughness. Like, of course I am going to play. Like, you're tricking yourself. But then you wake up and you're just like, oh, I can't do this.
I can't lift my arm.
I can't lift my arm.
Follow through is shooting.
Right.
You know, it's to do that for 3 hours.
Right. But don't give me the narrative, please. He refused to play. That I don't like that.
Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, I agree with what Andrew Siciliano is saying there. If you can't throw the ball, you can't play quarterback in the NFL. You just can't. And very valid question. Did you really think he was going to be able to play based on the fact that he hadn't been able to throw all week?
I mean, it's, obviously based on the fact that he barely threw on, throughout the week. I think there was obviously looked like there was concern. And I think, it goes back to what Andrew was kind of talking about there is if he can't throw the football, you're really not really able to provide much of the quarterback position. And considering it was a shoulder injury, an injury that directly impacted his ability, that I think plays more into it than anything because, he referenced the collapsed lung and, the injuries Deshaun Watson has played with in his career. If it's an ankle injury, it's one thing, maybe it impacts your ability to run or whatever, but if you're a quarterback and your ability to throw is impacted by an injury and you haven't been able to throw all week and, you can't really drive the ball past 10 yards, then it's just not going to work. And, with the bye week coming up after that game, it made sense, obviously tough luck for the Browns that, it wasn't just, a game, an AFC game. It was a divisional game against Baltimore where first place was on the line. It just kind of tough luck for the Browns, how that kind of unfolded. But, I think just, with the fact that they had 13 games left after this, you have time to make up ground. You have a weaker schedule in front of you with, with the Colts, Cardinals, Bears, Jets still on the schedule among other teams. There's time to make up ground, especially if you get Watson healthy, if you get him right. And, just see where you go forward, even though you come out of the bye against an extremely tough test in the 49ers.
So this is from BrownsWire.com. 5 things we learned about the Browns through the first 4 games, so at the bye week. Number 1, very little about Deshaun Watson. Number 2, Nick Chubb was truly the best running back in the NFL. Number 3, Elijah Moore is not a gadget player. Number 4, how much the same personnel can flip the script with the right coaching. And number 5, Grant Delpit deserves to be paid. Now, the one I kind of scratched my head about it, they don't really have this. I'm assuming flipping the script with the same personnel is a reference to the defense. They don't have the same personnel. There's like 6 different starters on the defensive side of the football. I know Garrett's the same. I know Ward's the same. Both of the tackles are different. Your safety is different. There's a lot of different pieces on that line. But I think it's kind of, we haven't learned a lot about Watson. They haven't figured out how to use Elijah Moore. And now the run game without Nick Chubb, you got a lot of things you got to work out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear through the first 4 games, if Nick Chubb's not getting the football, the offensive line, just doesn't look as good. And that's what you kind of see with franchise-level players is they can make everybody around them look better. And without Nick Chubb, it looks like the run game's kind of grinded to a halt. And I think part of that's just because the offensive line hasn't played up to snuff. These last couple of games, although granted, they have gone up against 2 really good run defenses in the Titans and the Ravens in back-to-back weeks. So there's a reason to understand that. But, I mean, it's clear Nick Chubb is the best running back in football. I don't think we really needed to dispute it. I don't think there's much doubt. Like you could put him in that. She should be in that conversation with Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor as far as the best backs in football. And it's clear how much his absence has affected this offense. Just we haven't really seen a lot of Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, and maybe the Browns need to trust in that, try to force some more trust in that running game and try to get them going a little more, not be so quick to abandon the run game. Maybe that's something that they should look at. But, I mean, when you lose an elite player like Nick Chubb, I mean, you can't just replace him. You just need the other guys around to step up. And the 2 games without him, it doesn't look like it's happened all that much.
Yeah, and they have to figure out where the yards you're going to be missing from Nick Chubb come from. And it may not be running the football. It may have to be short, quick passes. But time's ticking, and you better find the answers to that out because the season depends on it. This is also a little bit concerning. Teams with the best turnover differential this season. This from NFL Stats tweeting this out. So at the top of the list, you got the Cowboys, Buccaneers, Bills, Chargers, and Seahawks are the top ones. Bottom, so the worst. Patriots, Commanders, Browns with -7 ahead of the Vikings, Giants, and the Raiders. There is no stat like turnover differential. Teams that lose the turnover battle lose the game better than 70% of the time. I think it's 72 or 78% of the time. If you are negative in the turnover differential, you lose.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a remarkable thing when you look at the season. The Browns are 0-4 in the turnover margin and 2-2 on the field. So there's merit to that discussion. Andrew Berry talking about it on Wednesday, basically saying that things 1 through 5 he needs the offense to work on is protecting the football better. They go to Pittsburgh. Deshaun Watson has, just really struggles, has multiple fumbles. He throws the pick 6 on the first play of the game. The second of those fumbles he had turned into a TJ Watt touchdown, directly influenced the outcome of the game because 2 of those turnovers turned into points. And then Sunday, of course, DTR has those 3 interceptions, something you can't do in that situation as a backup quarterback. And I mean, this team in general, I think, you said it, they just got to protect the football better. I mean, the offense in the 3 games with Deshaun Watson, playing quarterback, 340 yards of offense or better in all 3. So they're moving the football up and down the field, but got to finish drives and got to protect the football. And that, I'm sure if Andrew Berry's talking about it now with such high emphasis as he was on Wednesday, that's got to be the number one thing they're talking about. I would assume, in those meetings in Berea is how do they protect the football better? How do you make sure that you're not giving it away, that you're protecting, that you're not putting the ball too much at risk? And because defensively, they're going to eventually force some turnovers. I mean, again, they've only got 3. You would imagine over time with the pressure that they're creating, with the coverage ability they have, those turnovers will be coming, I would imagine.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking a little bit about the Browns' defense. He mentioned the pressure. We'll give you some stats revolving around that. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's take a look. This is defensive ranks in havoc rate. So havoc rate takes into account a loss, no gain, forced fumbles, interceptions, pass deflections, pressures divided by total players. So Cowboys are number 1 with 67%, and the Browns and Bills are tied for number 2 at 57%. Tim, that kind of goes into what we had talked about before that. It takes into account turnovers, and even though the Browns aren't getting it, they are getting pressures, they are getting tips, they are doing the things that usually lead to turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, through most of these 4 games, with the exception of some in the Ravens game, just how they've made life miserable for opposing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson has really been the only one who's been able to withstand the pressure, and that's because Baltimore did a great job of protecting him and really limiting the amount of hits he took in those dropbacks. And when you look at those numbers, I mean, it's clear just, how much, this front four is just getting the job done. They're finding ways to create those problems and just to play the secondary. I mean, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, it seems like they're playing pretty well to start the season. So those are all things you're seeing out there. And it's a good number that kind of quantifies what you're seeing on the field. It's a good way to measure the eye test to what, just what they've been able to do this season. And you look at that top five as well. It's no coincidence that those five defenses are at the top, are some of the best in football, particularly the Cowboys at number one. I mean, 67% is pretty considerable, especially, considering it's a 10-point gap between them and second place.
So I know you wrote an article about this for cleveland.com. Fact or fiction? Are the Ravens heavy AFC favorites for the North after blowing out the Browns?
That's fact. I mean, especially if they go to Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers, they're going to be in sole possession of first place at 4-1, and then the entire rest of the division has to come to Baltimore the rest of the season. Not to mention, you look at the schedule, some of the toughest games they have. The Lions are coming to Baltimore, the Seahawks are coming to Baltimore, the Dolphins are coming to Baltimore. The only really super tough road game they have is on Christmas night and in San Francisco against the 49ers. I mean, there's the potential that's a Super Bowl preview we're talking about, but as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, and that's been a concern, last couple of years, he hadn't finished the last couple of seasons because of injury. If he's healthy, then this Baltimore team should be, they should be like running away with the AFC North unless the Browns get really hot, or Joe Burrow rediscovers himself, in these final few weeks or whatever of the season. But I mean, it's hard not to look at what Baltimore's done and not be impressed. I know they lost to the Colts, but they lost that game in large part because Matt Gay, the kicker for the Colts, had an amazing game. I mean, he kicked 4 field goals of 53 yards or more. I mean, their defense is getting stops, but there's only so much you can do when the other guy kicks 4 field goals beyond 50 yards. I mean, at that point, you just tip your cap and go on to the next game, and that's clearly how Baltimore, took it, because they went into Cleveland and beat the Browns by 25. Deshaun Watson plays in that game, though. Certainly, it could have been a much different outcome. I mean, it wouldn't have been a shock that the Ravens won anyway, but odds are it would have been a far closer game than what we saw on Sunday. But right now, it's hard to argue that the Ravens aren't, the runaway favorites right now in the AFC North through 4 weeks.
Yeah, they do have the wins in division, and the other teams have lost in the division, which, the tiebreaker of divisional record kind of is what you're saying kind of swings it.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they went to Cincinnati already. They beat the Bengals. They went to Cleveland, beat the Browns. They beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh on Sunday. They're already 3-0 in the division with all those games being road wins. And with how tight I think we expected the AFC North to be, those tiebreakers are going to matter because you want to host at least that first round game. And if you have that division tiebreaker, you're in outstanding position, especially if, for example, they go 4-2 or even 5-1 in the division. That's an amazing mark to be at, and that just really sets you up to have a great regular season record and probably host a wild card game at the bare minimum.
So the Browns have the week off. They'll be getting ready for the 49ers a week from Sunday. 49ers have the Cowboys Sunday night, so it's back-to-back pretty tough tasks for the 49ers. Take us through some of the things, and I know you've written an article about it for cleveland.com. Some of the things about the 49ers that we need to be aware of and know.
Yeah, so I did 3 things to know about the 49ers, heading into week 6. The first thing number 1 is there's just star power all over the roster wherever you look at it. Basically, every position you look at for the 49ers, they have a star. Christian McCaffrey at running back. I mean, he's had a sensational start to the season, looking like, probably the best running back in football right now, just because of how impactful he is. Then on that, also on offense, Deebo Samuel, the ultimate Swiss Army knife at receiver, Brandon Ayuk last season at 1,000 yards. You've got one of the best tight ends in football in George Kittle, and Trent Williams at left tackle, certainly has Hall of Fame potential. Defensively, Nick Bosa won Defensive Player of the Year last year. They go and add Javon Hargrave, who was a stud for the Eagles last season. Linebacker, you got Fred Warner, and at safety, you have Talanoa Hufanga. Both of those guys were all pros last season, so just studs up and down the roster. And number two, I thought this was very interesting. this is going to be Kyle Shanahan's first game in Cleveland Browns Stadium since his last game as offensive coordinator of the Browns in 2014. That's kind of an interesting fact. I would have assumed by now, because it's been almost a decade, he would have been back in Cleveland, but hadn't been the case. He was the offensive coordinator. It went to Atlanta right after that. And then obviously he took the head coaching job in San Francisco. I think it was 2017. Played the Browns once in 2019. We all know how that one is. When it was a 31-3 blowout on Monday Night Football. But, for Kyle Shanahan, again, this would be his first time in almost a decade he has stepped into Cleveland Browns Stadium. So it's kind of interesting. It's just kind of a fun fact more than anything. And number 3, I think people should underestimate Brock Purdy at your own risk. And I do my quarterback power rankings. I feel like I like him a lot more than a lot of other people do. I mean, when you look at what Brock Purdy does, is he the best quarterback in the NFL? No, he's not. But I mean, he's undefeated as a starting quarterback in the regular season. The only game he ever lost was in that NFC Championship game when he had that elbow injury. I think it was in the first quarter of the game, and he literally couldn't throw a football more than 5 yards, and obviously had to. There were questions whether or not he was going to be right for the season, but Purdy is 9-0 in the regular season as a starting quarterback. He had one incompletion last week against the Cardinals, threw for almost 283 yards. Yeah, he's got amazing skill players. He plays for one of the best offensive minds in the NFL right now in Kyle Shanahan, but he still had to perform. And right now, Brock Purdy's performing. Played well against the Steelers in week 1, and you cannot underestimate just what he has. I think he's better than people realize, and I think he's got a chance to really show it, because I mean, 9-0 is the start of the regular season. You're not undefeated as a starting quarterback in the regular season in the NFL unless you're really, really good.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Enjoy the bye week.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Always good stuff. Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. DJ Hazmat, you know him from his weekend air shifts, 93.1 WZAK, also a huge Browns fan. Weeknights, you can catch him on Dish Nation for Dish Network. We figured perfect way to wrap up each and every week is DJ Hazmat's look back at the Browns game. Here's what he gives us from the Browns against the Ravens.
Hey,
Listen, I couldn't believe what I was watching. Totally unprepared for what it would be without Watson. Never expected 28-3 to be the outcome. When it's time to earn respect, we don't succeed, Cleveland. How come? Deshaun was not playing because of an injury to his shoulder. So the plan was play the rookie and throw the game on his shoulders? I don't know who to blame, the coaches, the players, the owners. Meanwhile, the city that stole our team continues to own us.
That's how it is when you root for Cleveland, yo. The way we lose sometimes can be unbelievable.
I know.
No Super Bowl, still think we can achieve it, though.
Why?
Because it was all good just a week ago.
Lamar threw 2 and ran for 2 TDs on us. Offense played so bad, the defense started looking bogus. Without Deshaun, is this the type of team we are? Hopeless? I'm screaming at the TV, I need DTR to focus. Goes to show us don't believe that preseason hype. Thompson Robinson rocking 17. That's not Brian Sipe. That's Dorian Sipe. Behind some weak protection, gave us 4 sacks, 1 fumble, and 3 interceptions. Question, left tackle, why's Jedrick still playing? Wanna hit our quarterback? Where there's a Wills, there's a way in. And Kevin's play calling is getting called to the floor again, cause he didn't know the difference between a Deshaun and a Dorian. A rookie making his first start. It never crossed your mind? Maybe we shouldn't be having him throwing the ball 40 times? He gets away from the run like Kevin hates that type of grind. Bet he wish he could go back on DTR like a VCR rewind. He was overwhelmed and underprepared, prone to make a mistake. You gotta adjust your game plan when these are divisional stakes. Yeah, it's considered a blowout, but you know what I really hate? They took advantage of a rookie, now Raven fans thinking that they're great. Pump your brakes. There's still a long season left to go. Sacks for Elliott, Garrett, Tomlinson, and Okoronkwo. Hopkins split the uprights on his only field goal. We 2-2 into the bye. Browns, here we go. Here we go.
That's how it is when you root for Cleveland, yo.
Yeah.
The way we lose sometimes can be unbelievable.
I know.
No Super Bowl, still think we can achieve it, though.
Why?
Because it was all good just a week ago.
And that's WZAK's DJ Hazmat. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, Hey Haz. He does reviews of every Browns game, and we intend to have him on a couple times during the season. We'll have his reviews each and every week. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.